Okay. How many of you guys actually live on campus? Okay. I would like you guys to try to relax a little bit and just think of sitting in a room, right? And in this room, you have a whole bunch of your friends and you're all doing homework, but you're actually doing the homework. It's not like you're just talking. And when you start talking, you figure out that some of them have the same classes as you, so you guys start working together. And then you go on to figure out that even some of these friends have the same book as you, so you can use your book and not have to waste all that money. This is kind of what you get when you live on campus your freshman year. And so I would like to propose, or my claim is, it is more beneficial to require freshmen to live in the dorms of Cal Poly than commuting or living in suites. My 3 reasons would be because of available resources, making connections, and staying on campus prevents you from doing sort of kind of bad things. Now, my first point, available resources, what I mean by that is we have MASH. Now, MASH is a tutoring, program that we have at the school, and it's in the library, and it's free, and it's for math and sciences. We also have written tutoring, which also helps for English class. That you don't really have at your local library, so if you commute, that's kind of a bad thing. Also, office hours. Office hours are very easy to get to because when you live on campus, you can just go right up the street instead of having to drive all the way home. Like me, I commute, and I live in Fontana, and it is a 30-minute drive here without traffic. With traffic, it's an hour. So to drive an hour just to ask a question for 5 minutes doesn't really make sense. And then also time. Commuting takes, like I said, for me 30 minutes, and then traffic is an hour, and then I have to get up usually at like 5:30 just to make it to my 8 o'clock class. So from 5:30 to 7:30, that's 2 hours right there. And then that also accounts for an hour driving back home. That's 3 hours that you could be using studying or getting ready for another class. That goes for my first point. My second point, making connections. It's been proven that students learn more and work more efficiently in groups. According to an article on the Concord College website, it says that you are less likely to miss a group meeting than to tell yourself you'll study later, which I think is kind of true, especially for me. And then also a study by R. Keith Sawyer, which is a doctor and a professor of education, the arts and sciences at Washington University. And he states that the pattern of looking up and down and thinking about what the professor says, then looking up and putting it into your own words makes it more efficient and helps you learn more rather than just looking at a paper and reading it back over. My final point, or actually no, and then also socially, just having your friends be there to help you enjoy the college experience is a lot more fun than like me going to school, going to do your class and then coming straight home. You don't really get to enjoy school, and that also may affect you academically. My third and final point was staying on campus prevents you from doing bad things. When you're on campus, especially for the dorms, we have dorm leaders who are in charge of their floor, and then we have somebody over the whole dorm. And during that time, they monitor the dorms from time to time. And if you're trying to bring like alcohol or drugs or anything in there, they will catch you, and so that kind of prevents that. And then also there's quiet hours, so if you get too loud or try to have like a party or something you really shouldn't be doing, that also cuts that down on that, as well as room inspections that you have, which are surprise, but it's about like a week before they tell you. And they go in the room, and if anything looks suspicious, they can go in and check that. So that also prevents you from doing kind of bad things. And also, everything is closed on the weekends. So if you were to try to have a party, you have to go off campus. So that kind of makes you you just like don't have anything else to do but do your homework. And the only thing that is open is the library. So I guess they kind of planned that out very well. In conclusion, again, I say it's more beneficial to require the freshmen to live in the dorms of Cal Poly than in the suites. The 3 points were available resources, making connections, and staying on campus, which prevents you from doing kind of bad things on the weekend.
You don't have to stand up there. You can go sit down. That's fine. Makes you feel too much like a target if you do that. All right, Joshua, let's start with a couple of things that are pretty solid, and then we'll talk about a couple of things that you need to work on. I thought you identified the proposition early on in the speech, and you do provide a preview of the supporting material. I also think that you do a nice job speaking to the audience for the most part and explaining the concepts that you're talking about, so your reasoning process is pretty clear and understandable. Now, let's talk about a couple of things that are problematic about both the proposition and the preview. The proposition, the phrasing on the proposition is a little complicated, and you need it to be simpler and more direct. And the secondary claims are not stated as declarative sentences. They're just ideas or words. You need a declarative statement in order to make an inference. Now, when you get to them, you usually explain what you're saying on that point, but you want to make sure that it is declarative at the beginning of the speech also, so we know how these arguments are going to build together. So the structure, like I said, was relatively easy to follow, although I do think that you want the declarative sentences. Your transitions between the points are a little bit abrupt. I think you need to have kind of a little internal summary and then remind us what the second or the next claim is, as opposed to just what the topic is. A numerical signpost is not a bad idea. It's not required as long as it's clear. In your situation, I thought you were relatively clear that you were moving from point to point. On the evidence, you are very dependent on hypothetical examples. That everything on the first point and everything on the third point are basically all hypothetical examples. In the middle point, you have a couple of pieces of testimony that you're using. The first one I thought went pretty well for the argument that you're making. The second one, I'm not exactly sure that it applies to the idea of living on campus. It's an authority. They are talking about generally some of the advantages of working with other people, but there's not any reason why that has to be in this particular context. On the first point, the factual data that you had about the MASH program, it was not clear to me why it's not available to commuters or why commuters would not benefit from it, even though it is something that is available on campus. That doesn't mean that they couldn't use it. The idea of how much time it takes, well, in your particular case, you live half an hour away, but there are a lot of people, one of the reasons they might not want to live on campus is I live 10 minutes away. Why would I want to spend as much money as you'd spend every month living on campus when I can go home and be home almost as fast as I could walk to my dorm room if I got in my car and drove, and, Mom will cook for me and I won't have to eat dorm food, that kind of stuff. So I think your hypotheticals there are a little bit stretched. You can find plenty of information because this has been a policy that's kind of emerged over the last 20 or 30 years. More and more colleges are requiring their entering class to live on campus. That's become very standard practice at big universities, and they don't even let them stay in apartments or at home. You've got to live on campus, and there's a reason that they do that, and you need the research that supports the reason that they do that, and you don't really have that in the speech. All right. Thank you for volunteering to be first. He says, I volunteered? Kind of. Judd is going to be our next speaker. So if you are evaluating Judd or you're going to do the refutation of Judd's presentation, this is the one that you want to pay the most attention to tonight.